Alright guys, welcome to another highs and lows breakdown of the pound Japanese yen. We start with the weekly time frame. Last week was a reasonably very rangy week but it was a big range actually, where we made a high at 140.20 thereabout and a low coming in at 138.31. So that's approximately 200 pips, I'd say. But price kind of bounced within that range of going up to resistance, selling down to support, right? We drop down to the daily time frame, and on the daily time frame, what I would do, I'll bring back up all my lines, and we could see we had an extremely bearish day on Friday. This is an extremely bearish candle. It's a bearish engulfing candle. It engulfed the previous 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days of price action. Sorry, I had to boot. Looking at this chart, given that there was an extremely bearish day on Friday, this signals that this may be a reversal point where we may begin to see a deeper correction, provided that we break this trend line currently here. If I drop to the forward time frame, you'd notice that we are still functioning within this channel of higher highs and higher lows. So technically, we are still in a bullish market on this pair, but this area here is the area to look out for, where we could see some support being formed and we could possibly push up to create an even higher high. But provided that we don't stay above this trend line and we push down, we could see us push down to have a deeper correction, possibly into 136, 136.50 flat. It depends on what the market wants to do. What do I favor? I'll be honest, I'm really not sure. Like, I'm not 100% sure, but given this extremely bearish candle on Friday, I think it's like I'd say 55% possible that we're looking to get a deeper correction on this. 55 to, I'd say 55 to 45% that we may push up to retest the highs. Let's take this on the forward time frame. What would I look out for to get a trade in this market, right? For sells, there are two things that we could look out for, right? We could push up to retest one of these resistances, either at 138.80, 139 flat, 139.50, and even 140. Push up into resistance. Once we see some rejections and some a resistance formed, we could catch sells down to possibly break this trend line. Otherwise, what you would like to see is us break this trend line and possibly break 130. I'd say, to be safe, break 138 flat. If we could break this area, if I could bring this up here, let me see. Why aren't I clicking? Yeah, right. If we could break below this area at 138 flat, that would mean that we've broken this trend line. Retest 138 flat as resistance, we could sell this down for deeper retracement. Now, otherwise, note we are still in a bullish market, because look at this channel. We've had some perfect price action within this channel, right? If we stay above this area and I see some bullish rejections from this area, it would be a really nice position to take a buy to possibly push up to create a higher high and retest a higher spot on the channel. So that's even possibly going up to 143 or 144. Well, first we have to break 140 flat and catch this area as support. Let's take a look back at the daily time frame. Now, the daily time frame, what you have to note, right, is that we are in this extreme. You see this kind of price action all the way on to the left here. This is an extremely strong area of resistance, right? So for the safest buy would be us breaking up above 140, catching here as support and catching buys up, right? But look at the market structure. So I think what everybody needs to be focusing on is this area right here to see if it is we're going to hold this area as support to catch buys up. But given this extremely bearish candle, I think that it's possible that if we break below, we could retest this area as resistance and sell it down further for deeper retracement. Conversely, also, we need to be mindful that we could range about here for a minute, right? So we could push up, retest this area as resistance, push down, push back up. But what I favor is us pushing up, retesting 138.90, 139 there about, and selling it down into 138 flat. But for me, I'm going to be extremely careful around this area. If I see us maintaining a level of support, I'd take buys up. If I see us breaking support, I'd take sells down. So it's all up to the market at this point, but keeping a note, this is an extremely bearish. If we will not function within this channel and I saw this bearish daily candle, I would only be looking for sells. But given that this is a very this channel has been this channel has been respected for some weeks, well, for some months, well, not months, maybe weeks, for some weeks, well, I'm looking to see what price action does around this point. And if you remember in last week's video, I mentioned that price is probably going to push down to retest the bottom part of this channel, and we're currently at that point. So we are waiting to see what the pound Japanese yen is going to do. Let's check Euro USD. Let me remove all my lines at first. Let's check it on a monthly time frame. All right, so we're still in that place of indecision for Euro USD, right? On the weekly time frame last week, we pushed up a bit, and I think most of us benefited from the buys that I mentioned. If we break above 1900 flat, we could catch buys up, and we didn't push all the way as high as I thought we would have pushed, but we pushed up to a high at 1965. I closed out at 1950, so that was approximately 50 pips, and that was one of 3 trades that I took last week. On the daily time frame, it's still very, and I mean this has been across all pairs, right? Well, most pairs except for gold, I'd say. Across all pairs, we have been forming these kind of doji candles, very indecisive market we're currently in, and it's just because we had these strong movements a few weeks ago. So as I mentioned in previous videos, what the market likes to do is kind of consolidate for a bit before we get the next strong bullish or bearish movement in the market. So what I do is I drop down to the daily time frame, I bring back on all my lines, and as I mentioned before, right, I've been keeping most of my lines and not haven't been usually I like to deal with a clean chart to start the week, but because we're in this kind of range, we have been in the same range for like I think like 3 to 2 weeks, so it doesn't really make sense to me to be recharting every week until we start seeing some movement out of these ranges, right? So just like the pound Japanese yen, we had a bearish day on Friday. Let's look at the forward time frame and what I see for this pair. Now we've broken this trend line that has been running here for some weeks, and we broke the trend line, extremely bearish. And what I suspect is that, well, before we get into that, we've been functioning within this range of between 1900 and 1700 for, I'd say, the better part of 2 weeks. Now what I see happening is that we could come up and retest this trend line that we broke last week and catch this for some further sells down as the US dollar continues to strengthen, right? I'm a bit unsure of why the US dollar has been continuously strengthening. Oh no, I'm not unsure. All right, so we've had this range functioning on Euro USD, of which we've seen price sell up to, buy up to resistance, sell out to support, buy up to resistance, sell out to support. We popped up above the resistance where I mentioned last week that we took buys up and caught 50 pips. Unfortunately, I didn't engage in any sells on this pair because I had a very minimal trading week last week. But thing to note, we broke this uptrend line, and we could be possibly coming up to retest the trend line on this area of 1900 as resistance, or even 1850 as resistance to sell it further down on this pair. Just like last week, on this pair, I'd only take buys if we break above 1900, especially because we've broken this uptrend line. If I don't see price push above 1900, find some support on this area to buy it up, I'd be looking for sells on EURUSD. The two places that I'll be looking for sells is if we could push up now. One, we could push up and create a double top. If we push up into 1950, that would form a double top because that was last week's high at 1950. I'll take sells from there provided that we don't break above. Secondly, if we push up and retest this trend line at 1900, that'll be a really nice position once we see the kind of price action of a rejection to take sells down into 1700. Thirdly, if we fail to break above this area at, I think this is 1800 or around here, and form some resistance around here, we could see us selling down to 1700. And if we break 1700, down into 1500. I mean, if we break 1700, I mean, this range is a really big range, and I'm pretty sure I would be taking sells provided that we retest 1700 as resistance. Remember, on the monthly time frame, we're currently in this really strong area of resistance, right, guys? So we're keeping that in mind, and I've provided two scenarios by which I'd be looking for buys or sells. Now, I'd only be looking for buys above 1900. Anything below that, I'm looking to sell this down to catch a really nice movement to close off this month. What other pairs we could look at? We usually look at, let's take a look at the pound, Australian dollar. Alright, so let's look at the weekly time frame. On the weekly time frame, last week formed a doji candle. So we had, as I said previously, we have some indecision across all pairs in the market, right? But this is a bit more bullish doji candle than the previous markets that we've looked at. On the pound Australian dollar, again, last week Friday was extremely bearish. We rejected 1.8400, and we sold down into 1.8250. What do I see happening for this pair? Again, to be honest, I'm very unsure, and I say unsure just like the market is unsure, right? Let me see what's happening here. Looks like we have a little trend line forming on this area. It's not the best trend line, but you know, we're creating higher highs and higher lows because we created a low here. This is a high, this is a high, this is a high, a higher low, higher high, higher low. So provided that we could maintain this market structure, we could see buys continuing up. But if we break this market structure, and by break it, I'd say if we break below 8150, I think that's the same analysis I gave last week. A break below 8150 and a close below 8150, I'd retest 8150 as resistance and sell it down. But the current market structure on the forward time frame is a bullish market structure because we have a low, we have a high, we have a higher low, we have a higher high, higher low, higher than this previous low. So if we could catch some support around this area, even better, if we break above 1.8300, find this area as support, we could push up to catch the next leg into a higher high. Alright, so let's look at Euro Japanese yen and glance it on the monthly time frame, then drop down to the weekly just to get an idea of what's taking place, right, guys? Alright, this is an extremely strong area of resistance, and given that this candle is a bearish engulfing candle, I favor us selling down to possibly create a higher low, higher than this previous low. Now this is the weekly time frame, right? So you'll understand the difference why I'm considering that we could possibly sell down into 122 flat, and this would make us form a higher low if we could find some support around this area on the weekly time frame. But now remember, that's the weekly time frame, so this may not happen this week exactly, but over a period of time, right? We form a higher low, we could keep the market structure of this current uptrend. Dropping down to the daily time frame, yeah, we had an extremely bearish day on Friday again on this pair. So I suspect if let me see, this area, this is 124.50. All right, if we could break below 124.50, I'd say, and close below and retest that area as resistance, we could sell this down into 122. But I would be a bit cautious because you must have noted that we are in an extremely ranging market, so you kind of need to be cautious at around these areas. If I drop to the 4 time frame, let me see. Yeah, I like this price action. And when I say I like this price action, I like this price action for sells. See this area here? If we could push back up and retest this area as resistance, I'd be looking for sells on this pair. Because if we see on the 4 time frame, we have a little downtrend forming here. So if we could push up, retest this area, let me see if I can get the marker. Excuse me, I had to sneeze. Alright, yeah, if we could push up into this area, retest this area as resistance, we could sell this pair down to form a lower low at around 123.80. That'll be a really nice trade for me. Conversely, if it is we don't get the juice to push up to retest this area, we could push down, but provided that we break this area, we could retest it as resistance and sell down as well. So you'd be looking to take that trade at around this area here. Alternatively, if we can't break below this area and we hold this area as resistance, hold this area, sorry, as support, I'd look for us to break above this mini downtrend line, retest this area as support to buy it up. But for me, I favor the downside on this pair. Let me delete all this stuff. So you'll understand how I'm looking at these 4 pairs coming into this week. Is there anything I'm leaving out? I mean, I guess you could realize I've been a bit more laid back. One, because of my initial headache 2 weeks ago, and then secondly, I realized that the markets are just kind of rangy. There's no clear direction, as I mentioned weeks ago, that we could see that happen because of the strong bullish / and bearish movement that we've been seeing amongst many of the pairs. So you remember we capitalized on all these buys heading up, and now price has been kind of ping-ponging, right? But we have seen some signs Friday gone that there may be some strong movements coming up. Whether it's bullish or bearish, we'll wait to see what the market is about to tell us. So we had that strong bearish move on Friday. If we could push up into this area, we could sell this down. Now, I mentioned if we break above, find this area support, I'd buy it to create a new high. And also, you always need to be aware of double tops and double bottoms. So even if we break above this area and retest it as support, we could only push. If we push up, we could push up into last week's high, and if we catch this area as resistance, it could be a double top to sell down. So those are the different scenarios I'm looking at across the pairs. I hope this was helpful, guys. I mean, I'm still gonna continue being a little more laid back in these market conditions, unless I see the setups that I've mentioned in this video. So if I see this push up to retest this area as resistance, I'd look for sells. provided that I see the kind of price action that I want to see. From the time I see the market kind of range and doing nothing, I'm going to stay out. I'm not going to force any trades. Remember, guys, protect your capital. So I hope this was helpful. Enjoy your trading week.